This is gonna be a quick workflow video on how you can create sounds from scratch and add more assets to your sound effects library. This is especially useful if you want to create something but you don't really know where to start or you feel uninspired. Then you can just do what I'm going to show you, and it usually produces some very interesting and usable results that are worth saving in your library. So I'm just gonna start by creating a random sound with a synthesizer. I'm gonna be using Vital, but it doesn't really matter what kind of synthesizer you use. Draw in maybe a rather low note and make this 2 bars long so we have enough space to do some modulations there. And for this I want to use some wavetables that contain a lot of information. So we can use, for instance, this one. I'm just going to use LFO1 so we can scan through this entire wavetable. And let's just set this to 2 bars long as well. And we can add another one. Let's see what this one sounds like. Yeah, maybe use that one. Do the same here with LFO1. Maybe make this one a bit wider, give it a bit of detune and a few voices. And then maybe let's actually just add a sine wave for the sub here. So now we have this sound, and we're just gonna go to the effects section, add compression. Give it a bit of distortion. And then maybe add a tiny bit of reverb, just so that the sound isn't completely dry. And we can also just route the sine wave to the direct out. Just to add some more modulation here, we can use LFO2 and just set this to the global voice transpose. Maybe go for 1 octave here, and then we can just draw in some random pitch modulations here. Also make this 2 bars long, and now we have this sound. So let's just bounce this. And we can create another version, maybe with some filter movement. So let's just route everything through filter 1 and maybe use a high pass. And we can actually just use the same LFO for this one. Let's just bounce this as well. And now we'll do another round where I just put effects on this. Maybe let's just boost the volume a bit here. I'm just going to use Ableton's grain delay. But any multi-FX plugin or plugin that sort of mangles the sound that you have, you can use in this step. And I'm just gonna record some random modulation here. So let's add this on this track, and then I'm just gonna consolidate all of this so we have one long file to work with. And now I'm just gonna take small bits of this and play around with them. So let's create a few audio tracks and put them in a group. You can mute all of this here and then just start by grabbing one small part like this maybe, and then just see if we find some interesting good parts in there. And I like doing this by just enabling the loop function, and then we can deactivate the grid here, and then we can just freely browse through the sample. Maybe this one, then just copy this and look for another good part. Maybe something like this. Again, copy it and maybe play around with the pitch now. Maybe a bit longer here. This is interesting. Could even be used as a creature sound. Now another version where we just pitch it up. Actually change the warp mode here. This could be interesting as well. So at this point you can also start adding stuff that you already have designed. I think I'm just gonna add a kick here. Just a very clean one. Just reduce the volume of all of these files and then create short fade-ins to make space for the kick. Increase the volume a bit of the kick. And then let's just add a few more audio tracks and again, just copy one of these files and then start browsing through the sample again. Use texture mode again, maybe. This could be interesting. And then maybe another one. Again, just pitch it down and see what happens. So maybe let's just do some very basic processing on the sum here. And push it into the clipper a bit. And now let's just bounce this. And now we can start playing around with this sound. So let's maybe see what this sounds like at a higher pitch. That's a cool version too. Lower pitch. I really like the tail of this when it's at a lower pitch. But let's just keep that. We could essentially now start this entire process again, more or less. Let's maybe just grab this kick drum again and then grab some interesting sounds from here. Another one. And this one sounds good too. Maybe again one with a fade in. And let's just reverse this and see what happens. Maybe this and then another one. Actually make space for the kick again here. Sounds interesting as well. Let's just copy the processing that we did here. So let's bounce this one as well. Now we could also try layering these sounds. Group this. We could also make a version without the kicks. So let's just cut maybe this part. So it's more of a whoosh sound. You can also record this. And then just play around with the fade-ins and fade-outs of this to make it a bit more like a whoosh. And play around with the pitch. So we could keep this version and maybe a higher pitched one. So what we've created now is this. And now we essentially could just keep going with this process, use the layered sounds here, add more of these, add different sounds that you already have, and just keep resampling, keep layering, and trying out, different variations of this. And you will definitely end up with some really cool sounds. I think this is a good way to create user interface sounds, various game sounds, impacts, layers for different sci-fi styled sounds, weapon sound, gun sounds. And you can easily build your own library with this. And I would just save the sounds that I like, put them into appropriately named folders, and if you keep doing this over and over again, you will end up with a large personal library of your own sounds that you can just use and layer on top of each other to create new and more complex sound effects. I've also done this before. For instance, I made this sound, which I think is very similar to the one that we just made. The tail here definitely reminds me of some creature sounds from Stranger Things. So this is a really good way to just get happy accidents and just create sounds from scratch.